Welcome. I am Louis Rickey, Executive Director of the Indiana Arts Commission. I am sitting in my home office. I am an older male, white male, and I have over my shoulder a contemporary quilt art piece. And you can also see the headstock of my guitar. I am thrilled to be with you here today. We're talking about liability when reopening arts organizations or resuming arts activities with the public. This is the first of 3 webinars about legal issues in the arts during COVID-19. With me today are Paige Sharp and Scott Wiley. Paige is our Deputy Director of Programs at the Arts Commission. And Scott Wiley, please introduce yourself and give an audio description of your appearance for anyone participating with low vision or blindness.
Well, I'll go first and say that I'm Paige Sharp. I am the Paige Sharp of the IAC, and I am a white woman in my early 50s with brownish blonde hair, coming to you from my fabulous living room with a big painting in the back. And I'm wearing a pink blazer and a white top with what my son would call statement reading glasses. They have thick cream frames. So today we're really excited to have Scott join us, and very, very excited about the Indiana Lawyers for the Arts that he has launched for the state of Indiana. It's so exciting. It's a dream come true. So excited to have him with you all today. And we do have plenty of time to answer your questions, and so just please to submit those in the comment box, and we'll make sure to have Scott address them at the end, although he's gotten really good at reviewing comments as they come in so he can answer your questions. But I'll step in if I need to, so he gets to everybody's question. And we are broadcasting on Facebook Live. If you'd like to view the captioning, which we do have, you just click or select the gear icon at the bottom of your video screen. And the webinar is being recorded. So it'll be posted on our website later should you need to refer to it at another time. So Scott, introduce everyone to you.
Well, welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here today. My name's Scott Wiley. I'm the Executive Director of Pro Bono Indiana, which is the pro bono legal service agency for the state of Indiana. So we help match people in need with volunteer attorneys. I myself am a white male in my late 50s, sadly to say. I am sitting with I put on a blue blazer. I got a jacket on for the first time in a long time for this webinar. And I'm sitting on my back screened-in porch in my home in Evansville, Indiana. So you have I'm kind of framed by a window in dark green from my lovely screened-in porch. We are so glad to have all of you here today. And this has really been part of it. We have taken advantage as we began this trip we've been going through with COVID-19. One of the things that we saw was a real need in the nonprofit community, including the nonprofit arts community, for legal services to help people navigate the very confusing and disorienting circumstances that many of us have found ourselves in. And as part of that, I used to be a regional arts partner of the Indiana Arts Commission. We have begun putting together the infrastructure, currently as a program of Pro Bono Indiana, but moving toward having an independent, established Indiana for the Lawyers for the Arts in Indiana, something we have not had in the past. And we're using this opportunity during this time to launch that work, because of the really unique and challenging circumstances that our arts organizations are facing right now. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to focus on some conversations about what we deal with when we are reopening. We have reopened, we've reopened and need to think about closing again, or if we have to move between phases with differing levels of reopening, and how we can put your mind at ease, whether you are a small arts organization or whether you're an individual artist considering how you place your art out into the world, how you sell your art, how you deliver your art. And we're going to go through and try to give you a sense of how you can reduce the stress and reduce the legal risk that you may be concerned with. And by the way, it's completely reasonable to have those concerns only because we've scared everybody to death that we're going to do something wrong. And there are so many things out there trying to advise you to tell you how to do it that I just want to let you know. And as we all know, there is no such thing as a risk-free life. Before COVID, someone can slip on your floor at your gallery. Before COVID, you can have a nail sticking out of your frame inappropriately and hurt someone. So this isn't completely new. It's just new at this level. So what we're going to do today is hopefully really reduce your blood pressure and allow you to feel more comfortable in going forward with how you go about presenting your art and or selling your art. As we do this, in the announcement for this series of webinars, you saw that there is a telephone number you can call if you want individual and you want to try to, if you are a low-income artist or a low-income small nonprofit arts organizations, we can attempt to assist you through placing you with private counsel. If you are not, if you're the Indianapolis Symphony, I hope you're listening and watching today too, you got enough money to pay an attorney. But we'll be working to try to make sure that the legal needs that people are confronting right now have an answer. Hopefully I'll get some of those answered during this series of webinars that the Indiana Arts Commission has been happy enough to host so that we can get information about this initiative out to the arts community. It's really exciting with that. So I'm going to give you here's a little primer, a little beginning. And law is boring, so stick with me. First of all, we have two basic places where law comes from. And this is from our tradition, because most of the tradition in the United States, unless you're fun and live in Louisiana, all of our law basically came from the common law from Great Britain. So we're very uptight and British with our law. And law in Great Britain came in two forms. One, you went and asked the king for help. That was the court of equity. And that's really just looking at what's right and wrong. And then if something really moves the king because it was wrong, he'd do something for you. The way I think about that is the decisions we make based on morality, whether something's just right. And then there's the other, which is rules and common law based, which is when we decide to take something that we've decided is wrong and add some type of punitive punishment for it. We think about that like a speeding law. The punishment we get for that, if we break that rule, we get a ticket and we have to pay something. Or we might have to go to jail or things like that. So what's right and wrong, we're all struggling with right now. In terms of, even if it's legal to reopen, is it right to reopen? And I don't know if we're going to be able to help you a lot with that. That has been a discussion which, because we have no national policies on many of these things, are really dependent on the political establishment in any given state. What is right and what is legal vary to different degrees. For example, in Arkansas, there was never a stay-at-home order. There has never been a mask order. And their courts don't even require masks in public buildings. In Indiana, we've behaved much differently. We've been much slower to open. We had much more restrictive stay-at-home guidance from our government. And because of that, we have had less trouble, although we all struggle, and we're all having trouble again now, but we've had much less trouble. But you see how public policy and making decisions can affect how the pandemic goes. So what is right, you always struggle with. Is it appropriate for us to open our arts organization if 75% of our primary patrons are 80-year-old women? It may be legal, but it may not be right. So we're going to talk now about the legal part. And what's right is always going to be left to your heart and your brain and good decision making. In the legal side, we have two things to worry about. Is it legal from a criminal law viewpoint, or is there a risk from the civil law viewpoint? I'm going to talk basically about criminal first and just get it out of the way. It is almost impossible for you to do something with your reopening or the operation of your arts organization that is going to result in you being arrested or criminally prosecuted for doing something criminal. I'm going to give you an example where it just happened, however. California has a very strict stay-at-home order right now because they're having a huge outbreak. Los Angeles County has outlawed gatherings over 10 people and closed all bars. Last week, a group of first responder, primarily law enforcement officers, had a private party with no masks in a bar with almost 200 people there with no social distancing. The bar owner was arrested. The bar owner is being prosecuted. And the bar owner faces fines and potential jail time. So with that, there can be criminal liability. So you always want to follow the law. So if the law is a non-essential business must be shut down, do not risk getting cited by the authorities by opening inappropriately. But I think most of us can agree that that's not a problem that any of you are really facing. None of you are planning on doing something illegal, whether that's in your private sale of your own private art, or whether that's in your work as being an arts organization. So what we're going to look at is reducing the risk in the civil arena. And what the civil arena is that is where you get sued for money damages. That's all we can do in the civil arena, is sue each other for money. And it scares us. We get in an automobile accident and we're worried the insurance company will sue us. If someone slips and falls, we have liability insurance to pay for that because we're afraid they'll sue us. That's civil, and that's about money damages. And I'm now going to tell you how to eliminate 90% of your risk of ever being sued because of the pandemic or for almost any other reason. I swear to you, 90% risk reduction. Try your best. That's it. That's not very good legal advice, is it? Seemingly, like what he just telling us, try our best. Well, the reality is civil liability is based on tort law. What tort law basically is you have a duty, you somehow breach that duty or fail to reach that duty, and that breach of that duty causes damage to someone. So let's take an arts organization. Let's take a gallery. So a gallery, when it's open, needs to provide a safe environment for people to look at art. So as long as the gallery makes sure that there aren't holes in the floor, there aren't dangerous wires hanging, there aren't, things of danger, for the most part, you're going to be pretty safe from liability. Now, if you have a stairway in and one of the tops of the stairs breaks in half and you have a great big old hole and someone steps through it, well, you didn't meet your obligation to protect them, that duty you had. So for the most part, if people see that you are doing everything possible to protect them during the pandemic and afterwards, so this is good guidance for your operation after the pandemic's over, which I hope is, wouldn't it be nice if it just disappeared? But if you're able to do the best, so that's why at the door you have a hand sanitizer and you have masks. And when you're in there, you have little stickers on the floor that say social distancing and stay 6 feet away. You have prominently placed information on your front door saying if you have these symptoms, please do not come in and seek medical care. You have very big things saying if you don't have a mask, you can't enter. You put everything out there, not because that necessarily will completely protect people from the spread of COVID. It won't, unless you encapsulate everybody in plastic wrap, which, by the way, will kill them, so they won't have COVID either. But the reality is, unless you do that, there's no 100%. Even if we all wear our masks, it only reduces it about 90, 92%. The reality is there's always a chance. But the people who might potentially pursue a matter against you are highly unlikely to do that if proving that you breached your duty is impossible because you did almost everything you could. So you already know, everyone that's watching today has been to a business, I'm sure, in the last 3 or 4 months that's doing it right. You go in, every staff member is wearing their mask. Everyone in the business is wearing a mask. They have hand sanitizer. Anything that is regularly touched is not available for you to touch, but a staff member with gloves is touching it for you. You've been to those businesses. I'm not going to sue them if I get sick after being there. We have also been to the other business, the business where not everybody working there is wearing a mask, where there's no hand sanitizer, where they have one of those obnoxious signs in the front door is, "This is America, I woke up free, do whatever you want." When the other people in there aren't wearing masks and no one is observing social distancing. They are, believe it or not, at much higher risk of civil liability because they are clearly not meeting their community issued duty to keep people safe. Where this can get confusing is where we have been in part of this pandemic, and that is when we have recommendations but not requirements or other things, and that makes it very difficult for you. So the number one thing you can do, whether you're preparing to reopen your business and start doing new paintings for people, or whether you have a small arts organization and you're trying to reopen your gallery, or whether you're reopened now and you're just struggling with the kinds of ups and downs of the pandemic, we really need to think about how we go about making sure that people keep through. So I want to talk about a few issues that we're all dealing with, and then we're going to take questions after that. But these are the major ones that people are dealing with. First of all, one of the things that can get you in trouble from a risk perspective is if you are not consistent. You have to be consistent. You can't make some people wear masks and not others. You can't, "Oh, you're one of our regulars, come on in," and you don't have to observe the rules. And then the next person that comes in, you do. You need to train your staff. And if you are doing this as a solo practitioner, you need to be consistent in how you do things. That's probably one of the biggest risk factors that you have, because that shows a lack of concern of making sure that the transmission doesn't occur. Don't let your staff get lazy. I wish I don't have my mask with me now, it's in the kitchen, but I can't tell you how many times I feel like I need to explain to someone when I do go to a business or go somewhere else that their nose is attached to their face. And that nose is also attached to their lungs. So if you see your staff constantly pulling their mask down and leaving their nose exposed, if you see them taking it off and forgetting to put it on when a patron enters the gallery, or when someone coming to buy a painting comes, you don't put your mask on, be consistent and make sure your staff doesn't get lazy. It's uncomfortable. It's difficult. I forget mine all the time. I have to be at court at 8 o'clock every morning for our help desk. I have to wear a mask. I can't tell you how many times I'm 3/4 of the way to the door before I go, "Oh, darn it," didn't cuss, "Oh, darn it, I have to go back to my car and get my mask." But we have to be consistent, and we have to make sure we don't get lazy, and we can't sit there with a mask half down or with it off. We can't be right in people's faces. We got to use social distancing. We have to do that. We did have a question down in the chat box about private rentals. And by the way, many arts organizations deal with private rentals from both sides of that, right? We both rent equipment with chairs or other things, all kinds of stuff, if we're going to have an event. And then we also may have that stuff, and we may have private folks want to do it, like they want to have a wedding or they want to do stuff. So that's a double side thing. So with private rentals, that's like any other service that you deliver. So let me talk about real quick from both sides. If you are renting your stuff to someone else, so you're renting the gallery for the wedding, or you are doing things, you have to establish very clear guidance on both the use of your equipment and the use of your space. Are you going to require them to have it sanitized before returning it? Are you going to insist that if they use your space in your facility that they must follow your masking and other guidelines? You have to put it out in front. You want it, especially if you do rentals yourself, you want to have it in writing anyway. That's good legal guidance. Never have an agreement or contract that's not in writing, because your lawyer will go, "You don't have that in writing." That is, trust me, that's All will do. No, please do that. So you want to, and just view it as the same as any other service you offer. Everything. And I will say one of the blessed things that we have discovered of COVID, while it can live on surfaces, and while it can, the primary transmission of COVID, if you review the CDC and other guidelines, the primary transmission is what I'm doing now is through my mouth, through my nose, and if I cough or I sneeze. The reality is there has not been very much transmission demonstrated from the touching of surfaces. And usually the touching of surfaces that has resulted in any type of infection has been very, very recent. So like if I cough right now onto a surface and then someone immediately touches it. So the reality for rentals, the fear about, oh my gosh, I'm going to do that, and then the chair is going to come back 3 days from now and it's going to have COVID all over it, and then I'm going to sit in it and get sick. Luckily, that's not as high a risk. It's not completely safe, which is why when it comes back, you want to spray everything. But the reality is that has proven to be, I know you all remember, and I'm old enough to remember, in the AIDS crisis, everybody was afraid to touch doorknobs. Eventually we find out, we get very scared at the beginning. We were all scared. Oh my God, it stays on stainless steel for 2 days. So we never went to the kitchen again. The reality in the end, what we continue to find out more and more is that person-to-person transmission is the primary method for this illness. But for all your stuff, send stuff up, make sure it gets clean one way or the other. You can either transfer that duty to your person you're renting to, or you can keep it for yourself. It's probably better to keep it for yourself because it gets done. People lie. I know, lawyers hear that all the time. On the other side, if you are renting from someone, you want to make sure that they're able to get you the rentals and get you the equipment in a safe way. Many programs, especially people who are renting equipment professionally now, are doing contactless delivery. Are doing everything so you don't have to sign contracts and they're doing everything online. But it is an area that we have concern in our industry, of course, because so many of us deal with these issues. Obviously, do you remember asking? We'll get to the liability waivers in a second. That's a great question, though. That is.
And Scott, when you get to the liability waivers, would you also talk about signing something electronically versus paper, and whether to include that in a contract?
Oh gosh, there we. Well, let me do these last two, and I'm going to ask you to remind me of that in just a second, Paige.
Okay.
I'm going to go through a couple more of these, and then we'll do that, and then we'll just finish questions for just fun for the rest of the hour. What do you do? Now I'm going to talk briefly about, and I'm not going to curse. You may choose your own version of what you would call these people. What do you do when you have someone who is disagreeable and will not comply with your actions? So let's say you want to do it, you do temperature checks, or you have the requirement to wear the mask, or what do you ever have? You need to post that. You want to have that in a prominent place so people are noticed of that. So they know that that is your requirement. But as a private business person and or a nonprofit or private gallery business, you have the right to determine the terms at which people utilize your business. There is not a constitutional right to go in a business and be a jerk. There is not a constitutional right to enter a business and not wear a mask if it's required. There is not a constitutional right to walk into a business with 103 fever during a pandemic just because you think you're allowed to. You may have people that believe that. You may have people that tell you that, but that is not the case. Just as you can require shoes, shirts to get service, you can also require masks, no temperature, and other appropriate protective activities, such as staying 6 feet apart. But there are many people who have been moved by whatever motivation to believe that this doesn't exist, that everything's a hoax, that you're just taking away their constitutional rights, and this is the beginning of the United Nations taking over all of our society. The reality is we can't control that. That does mean you may have to remove someone or not allow someone in your facility, or not allow someone into your home if you're a home-based business, or other things. You do not have to allow people in. And when they tell you that they're going to tell all their friends what a terrible anti-constitutional person you are, unfortunately, that is just the way it is. I will tell you, I think that is a small enough portion of our Indiana population that I would much rather not make people sick than to allow people to run roughshod over all of us and not wear their mask and not do their stuff. The most important thing with that, however, is not so much they're telling people to get out. We've all watched the videos of people who scream and yell and throw their food at Costco on the ground and run out because they have to wear a mask. But what I'm most concerned from a legal perspective is your staff. If you have staff that are confronted by someone like that, you want to talk about how you're going to deal with that. And how you deal with that is you withdraw and close the door. If they are already in your facility, you withdraw, and if needed, if they are the least bit rude or obnoxious, you call 911. Police don't like dealing with this, but they know they have to. What you don't do is confront the person or endanger yourself anyway if they are raising their voice or getting inappropriate. You need go no further than the internet to find all these people are pulling guns on people. Because the poor kid at the, the Steak and Shake said, put your mask on, and some guy will pull a knife on him. Well, the solution to that is close the window and back away and call 911. We do not engage those folks. I watched one of the very first mask obligations in our society was with Costco. And there was a great video Costco put up on their Facebook page of one of their associates who, when he was informed that the gentleman who was not wearing a mask wanting to buy things at Costco proceeded to tell him he had awakened in a free country and he had no obligation to wear a mask and he couldn't do it. And he was filming the kid. The Costco associate looked into the camera, said, thank you so much for shopping at Costco. And we want you to know that all of you at home who are watching this video on his Instagram account, that we care about you and want you to be safe, which is why we're all wearing masks and why we ask you all wear a mask. Thank you so much. And then he grabbed the guy's cart, pulled away and left. And the guy was just standing there. It's one of the most effective uses of diffusing a confrontation I've ever seen. But if you don't have the ability to diffuse, if you don't have the ability to be safe, you want to protect your staff and have a conversation if you have multiple staff about how you're going to deal with that person. And then always realize that you can always refuse people to come in. Offering them alternatives if they don't wear a mask is wonderful. Saying something like, we appreciate the fact that you don't want to wear a mask. Can we bring the piece out and show you in the parking lot? Instead of coming into my living room, would you feel comfortable with me bringing it to your car? Think of alternatives that will allow you to deliver the service otherwise. Now, there are people, and for example, at the beginning of this call, for people who have limited sight, we went through the process to describe ourselves. You may have people for whom wearing masks is difficult, people with COPD, people for whom have allergies or other things. Usually, individuals who have a legitimate barrier to wearing a mask will have a doctor's verification with them. If they do not, use good judgment. By the way, my chiropractor told me that I shouldn't wear a mask because it messes with my chakras. No, as much as you may believe that, that's lovely, but I don't feel comfortable with you coming in without a mask. We want to be sensitive to those people who can't, but we also have to realize this is a health pandemic, and we may have to find alternatives to ensure that they get the experience and do the other things, but we protect ourselves with that. So let me go back to liability protections. If I could see you, which I cannot, but if I could see you, I would ask you how many of you have ever gone into a parking garage and pulled a parking ticket that on the back says, this is a contract, please read it, but then proceeds to say that if a caveman comes into the parking garage and crushes your car with his big boulder, that they somehow aren't responsible for that. Liability waivers have very limited use in that we typically don't allow you to say, no matter what I do or how horrible I am, you can't do anything to me if you want to come see my pretty piece of art. It's an unfair balance of power. So those liability protections really are most effective to give notice to your patrons that there is a risk, that you are doing everything possible to reduce that risk, but that they need to understand that they are undertaking some level of risk by participating in your program. So they do have value and they can be helpful, but they are not a blanket protection So if your staff yanks their masks down and they don't comply and don't stay vigilant, even though that person signed that liability waiver, it may not protect you unless you're doing all the things you told them they would do in exchange for getting that waiver. And in some circumstances, they're absolutely worthless, like the parking garage example. Do you have an ability to ask a question about that parking garage ticket? Do you have the possibility of negotiating with the other side? How can it be a contract if it's totally one-sided? So you also have to understand that liability waivers are really about a person being able to make a decision about whether they are going to entertain that risk. So in the liability waiver, it isn't, your liability waiver just shouldn't be, hi, welcome to the Rights Home in Evansville, Indiana. If you want to walk in our doors, you have to agree to waive all liability against the Rights Home no matter what. That's not a liability waiver that's going to provide any real protection. A liability waiver, however, instead that says, welcome to the Rights Home in Evansville, Indiana. We understand this is a really challenging time, and we want to make sure we provide you the safest experience possible. To do that, we're providing sanitation stations throughout our facility. We will provide you a mask if you don't have one. We ask you to wear a mask the entire time while you're in the museum. We ask that you stay at least 6 feet away from other patrons and the docent who's going to be giving you the tour. If you have any limitation that makes it difficult for you to hear or other things because of the mask everyone's wearing, we'll do our best to get you a radio thing, blah, 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 ... Then having someone sign something like that is much more likely to provide you some level of liability protection as long as you do what you say you're doing. So don't then let everybody in, tell everybody, oh, just take your mask off, don't worry about it, and then don't let everybody crowd around, because that's going to kill your liability protection. But that's the type of thing that actually works. So I hope that gives something. And Paige, you want to give me any other guidance on any additional things that I missed within that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still kind of, it's a really struggle. It's a big struggle area for lots of people. And I feel like
it's terrible. And there are good examples. You know, the one thing that that lawyers do is, we sue people all the time for plagiarizing, and then our entire career is based upon stuff. So, one of the things you can do, there are many, by the way, there are several consultants across the country that are helping people with reopening. Here in Indiana, one of my dear friends, she's also an attorney, but she doesn't give legal advice, but Sarah Peterson, I think she even has her website up, which is Sarah Peterson Consulting, is one of the wonderful folks. If you literally Google arts reopening consultants, there are several across the country, but a lot of them have websites, which is what, for example, if you call us and you're looking for additional reopening and things, it's the type of thing we may very well send you to initially. But the reality is there are lots of guidance out there. And included in that are people that have pretty good liability documents and things. Now, we did talk about whether electronic versus paper. Right now, for example, there's, here's a piece of paper, here's an ink pen. If I hand you this piece of paper and this ink pen, how many contacts have we just had? Do I need now to, I gotta wipe the pen off with the sanitizer, right?
Yeah.
And what do I do? Run this through, I probably put it through some strong UV light. We'll see who gets that job. But the reality is, electronics just fine.
Okay.
Trouble with electronic, of course, is how do you do it? Now, I'll give you an example, one that I thought was pretty good. I'm doing lots of these talks on a whole bunch of different subjects. I was doing a talk at Habitat for Humanity in Evansville, Indiana, which is the 24th largest Habitat affiliate in the entire country of the United States. And when I went in, I had to hand sanitize and be seen doing it. Then I had to have my temperature taken by one of the staff, and I had to have my mask on. And then she had a little iPad, and she had 4 questions she asked me. Have I had a temperature? Have I been around anybody that's had COVID? 4 questions. And then she said, I need you to read this paragraph. And then after that, I'm going to poke this for you, which was the acknowledgement. I thought that was one of the most effective entries I've had into almost any organization, any nonprofit. Nothing, I touched nothing. It was never within 6 feet of anyone. It was explained to me in detail. She then walked away and let me read the paragraph. And then I told her to poke the button. No contact, thorough in its thing, clear to me what I was buying into. I think that system that I saw there would be one that if I were trying to say that Habitat's paying no attention and they're loosey-goosey and I should be able to get a lot of money because I got sick because I was there, I think most courts are going to throw it out. You know, that if we really got to that point, we'd be suing all our grocery stores and all our drug stores and everybody else too. You know, the idea of this is to give your patron the sense that you care and that you are doing everything possible to provide a good experience that is safe. And if you believe part of that good experience is for you to try to limit your liability by having them give up the ability to try to do something negative to you in the future, that's an agreement. Because, you know, the alternative is just, you know, no, get out. Well, we're inviting people into our homes if we're private artists. We're inviting people into our galleries or our small arts organization or our theater or wherever we're doing our art. We don't want to create an antagonistic relationship with them. You know, shoving a piece of paper in front of them saying signing or you can't come in, that's just that one-sided thing. You know, it may provide some limited amount of protection, but is that the way you want to do it, as opposed to as part of our making sure that you'll have a safe experience here at the Rights Home? We just want to ask you a few questions, and we want to show you what we're asking you because you are accepting the risk of coming in. You know, if you make it more of a conversation about how you as the art provider and they as the patron are helping art go forward, I think you will find that you won't need liability protection.
So is
not find that.
I suspect folks will probably still want some degree of liability protection, but what it sounds like that you're saying is it's really about sharing and understanding. This is what we're doing. You're acknowledging that this thing exists, but it's also acknowledging you're doing all that and I'm still okay with the fact that I'm going to come into your business. And it's a mutual agreement, but does it also function as a waiver of liability?
No, not completely. And having a simple waiver paragraph or something I think is completely acceptable. But did any of our arts organization have a waiver agreement for slips and falls before COVID? Did any of us have a waiver agreement for where you came in when people had art that was three-dimensional and might fall over? Did any of us have a waiver agreement that if your child pulls over this three-dimensional piece of art and it kills him, that you won't sue us? No, none of us did.
Right.
This is bringing this issue to the forefront for oftentimes the first time. Now, I will tell you, you know, the only waiver agreement I have ever seen in an arts organization in Indiana is a parking garage. And it's that damn little ticket, excuse my language, that damn little ticket that says I'm giving up on my rights in the parking garage. And that's usually because we rent out the parking garage to the city or somebody else and it's not really ours. No.
Oh, okay. I was like, what is that?
You know, the reality is that we could all create a document and it says, welcome to the Rights Home in Evansville, Indiana. If anything happens to you, if you are hit by an unidentified flying object, if a zombie comes out of the basement and eats you, you can't do anything because we care so little about you. We're saying you're free of anything. We have no responsibility, even if the building falls down while you're in here because it's our fault. Doesn't matter, you know, and that's what I'm trying to get across to everyone, that
Right.
the reasonableness.
So let me ask you this. So let's say I'm a patron and I'm going to buy a ticket online to go to a performance, and it's the organization states these are all the efforts that we're taking, and then you select the box. Okay, I'm good with that. I'm still going to get my ticket and I'm going to go to the performance. But if I see that they don't follow through on some of those elements, does that mean that they're open up to be liable because they didn't follow through on that?
It's the number one reason why people have liability risk. And that is, you told me that I was going to get this, and then I didn't get that. That does two things. One, puts people at risk, and two, peeves off people.
Right.
So yes, that's why if I'm 58, 57 years old. And I am close to the age where I'm at risk for higher comorbidity. If I go to the grocery store and my checker is not wearing a mask, when I walked up to the door of Schnucks and it said, mask required, we wear masks because we care for you. And that person that doesn't wear a mask checks me out. And when I tell them, please put your mask on, and they don't, and then I get sick,
Right.
I'm mad at them. Whereas if I go in Schnucks and everyone has their masks on and everybody's 6 feet apart and everybody has everything and I get sick, Schnucks is not my target. So, the reality is we're all, and by the way, those tools Paige just mentioned, online tickets ahead of time so you know the kind of volume of people you're going to have, the ability to warn them and give them guidance on all the things you're requiring of them or you're asking of them or that you're going to be doing. You can do that ahead of time because you're having it online. So if I go online to the Rights Home to buy my ticket for the Rights Home and I see I have to mark that I've read the COVID thing and then my ticket comes out, you've accomplished so much of building that relationship of trust that you're taking the steps necessary. And this goes back to the very beginning of this talk, right? What's right? That you're treating them with the kind of care and respect as your patron or the purchase of your art, that really makes a difference.
So I want to make sure that we also bring in the perspective for artists into this conversation, because this is a big deal. This is a big struggle area. This is their livelihoods for so many of them, particularly performing artists. What can they do to protect themselves and, provide that expectation to the audience in advance? What about, that they're just doing performance in, an outdoor environment? What would you recommend that they do?
And that is, and I will tell you, our performing artists have suffered probably more than any segment of the arts community, only because they're dependent on venue oftentimes. Many of our people who produce 2- and 3-dimensional art or who produce other types of visual, there are other alternative ways to sell. You can mail things, there's so many things, but for a lot of our performing artists or folks who depend on public contact for the delivery of their art, and that could be either, like if I were a good singer, which I'm not, a performing artist, or it could be, I go to farmers markets every weekend and set up a booth, and there I am. I think what all artists want to do is ensure that whoever they are working with in the delivery of their art, whether that's a venue, whether that is a presenter, whether that is participating in some type of event, that the people they are working with are taking the steps necessary to ensure the greatest level of safety. Obviously, if I'm a performing artist, if I'm a singer right now, going out and announcing I'm going to have a concert in a park is, right now, people are desperate for things like that. I would be, oh my goodness, someone's going to have a concert in the park. Well, I want to make sure that the Parks Department or whoever I'm doing that as part of, make sure the chairs are all 6 feet apart, 6 feet every direction, that there isn't congregation allowed, that there are masks if necessary, depending on your local ordinances. And by the way, as we've, so much of this legal, the best thing to go to your local health department, go to the governor's website, which gets you to all the Indiana things for the reopening plan, go to the CDC for the federal guidance, and then there are consultants out there that have all kinds of other guidance as well. So I want to make sure, because one thing, you won't be, I doubt very often that if a concert is held in a park and the presenter of that concert does not provide good rules, and this is where this is happening most, is in bars. Mm-hmm. What's happening is, I get picked up for a gig and I'm going to go do my, well, if it were me, it'd be doing my songs from the 70s and 80s on my acoustic guitar. The backstage bar and grill, and I get to the backstage bar and grill, and they put me up on the stage, and there's this room of squished in 20-year-olds, none of whom are wearing masks, even though it's required. What do I do?
Yeah.
Well, and I will tell you, as an artist, to some degree, your arrangement with the presenter, mm-hmm. In terms of your liability protection, that you were accepting no liability, and no, this may change your artist agreement You may want to make sure that in order for me to perform, but then you're there, oh gosh, if I do that, they're not going to hire me. It's a tough thing. It's kind of like when you're brand new at a brand new job and you see something unethical occurring and you think, okay, I've been here for 2 weeks and I owe $80,000 in student loans. I think I'm going to go tell the boss that my supervisor's being unethical, or do I want to keep a job? Many of us are in positions where sometimes that equity side, what's right, really is challenged by what's legal. And the guidance I give to each of you is if you confront that as an artist and you are in a bar and you're performing and you see something like that going on, you have to really seriously consider whether or not you need to leave. And that's for two reasons. One, because it's right. My opinion. Other, you are potentially involved in something that could result in a really bad outcome from a risk perspective. And while you might not be ultimately held responsible, because it's going to be the presenter, the owner of the bar, the person, they're going to be the one that's going to get sued. But I don't know if you want to be part of that lawsuit. You'll get named. You won't be held liable for it. You were just hired hands. You're no different than the waitress or the bartender. You're just a hired person at that facility. But it's going to be a real challenge for all of our, which is why, by the way, I think for those people who are watching this either now live or who watch it virtually later, who are presenters, galleries, theaters, people who put on, festivals or concerts or other things, why it is so important to make sure in your presentation of art that you take these things into account and you accept. We all know there are going to be some people that just will not follow the rules. There's going to be a Yahoo in that audience who is going to take his mask off and start spouting that he's got a constitutional right to breathe free. Well, how do we deal with that?
Right.
And that's a societal issue that is beyond the scope of this series of webinars, unfortunately. But it's something you want to really consider, because how are you going to deal with that? And because we're all going to have to do it. Now, it's no different. If you've run a local gallery, you've had a drunk person in your gallery you've had to kick out before, I'm sure. If we live in urban areas, we often have people that might be sleeping on our front porch. We all confront challenging situations that require a mixture of kindness, understanding, and other things. But thinking about them ahead of time is a really good thing.
So there's another question that's really, I think, a good one too. And that is, let's say you have a staff member or a board member and they went to an area of the country, Florida, Arizona, that has a very high potential, has an outbreak, and they come back and but they come back to work, and you don't do anything about it, and they end up maybe infecting somebody, or they become infected. Is the organization liable because they didn't do anything about it, even though they technically didn't have it, or at the time, or we didn't know?
That's why having a reopening plan that is detailed and thorough is really helpful. Do I think people are going to start suing each other because the clerk at Schnucks went to Disneyland and came back and didn't self-isolate but didn't tell me? I don't know. What we're talking about here is reducing risk. We can't totally eliminate it. I certainly, if I were an arts organization or I were an employer and I had an employee that was getting ready to take a trip to Disney World or to Phoenix, I think what I would probably do I would probably have, a discussion in my policy. If you do travel, and you travel to an area of the country that is considered a hotspot, which, by the way, we define as having a 5% or greater positivity rate in the testing pool, by the way, which is about 95% of our entire country right now, unfortunately. But in the most part, when we get to a more reasonable time, if you are in a place where, Indiana, I think our rate's down to about 9.1 right now. We were doing much better than most of the country. We were lower than that for a period of time. But if you do take that kind of trip, I think it's completely reasonable to have a policy in your organization that you do, upon arrival home, you'll take a test, and that you will work from home. for a period of time. That period of time keeps changing. From, if you look at the guidelines from the CDC recently changed it from 14 to 10 days in circumstances of self-isolation. Some states have made it as little as 7 if you have a negative test. But that's a reopening policy question. There isn't a legal thing on that, in that the reality is someone can not travel at all, not go anywhere, wear their mask every day, and get it at the drugstore and not know it and give it to someone. How is that different than the person going to Florida? You still gave it to someone. So the reality is all these are risk reduction techniques. The chance the person who wears their mask all the time getting it at the drugstore, really little. So the risk is really little, so maybe you don't have to deal with that as much. The person going to Disney World for a week and not wearing a mask because Florida is insane, and then coming back, much higher risk. So maybe that's the one you have the policy for. Okay, right. No. Going to Disney World, God bless you, have fun, but you're working from home when you get back and you gotta get a test.
Okay, so it sounds
treat all your employees the same, regardless. So you can't just have the 20-year-old goes down to Florida and you don't do that to them, but the 70-year-old does. You got to treat all your employees the same.
That's good. Yeah.
All of these reopening pieces of guidance included in the governor's plan, with the CDC plan, or any of the private consultants will give you lots of guidance on those types of things.
Okay, great. So, and I do want to, I think somebody had asked about, it's not the organization's responsibility to do the contact tracing. The state of Indiana has set up for that.
So what is helpful, if you did have someone to be helpful to your, and this has been transferred to the state, most health departments have given the state the tracing responsibility now. The best thing you can do is have good records. So, you know, an idea of knowing how many people are coming through your door, who's coming through your door, those things can be very helpful. If you ever did have to help in a conflict tracing, the faster contact tracers are able to identify people, the less spread we get. So you are correct. There is not an obligation for you to contact trace, but you may be vital in helping the state contact trace by having good records. So, you know, if, for example, if you sell tickets online, what a wonderful way, because you can say, okay, this person was here on Tuesday, the 20th of June, boom, you can look who all was here. You know, so if you do have ways of helping, but you will not be personally responsible, the ill person is responsible for telling the tracers who they have been around.
Okay, so we've got a few minutes left, and I just want to make sure that we highlight the Indiana Lawyers for the Arts and how who was, let's say, eligible to contact you, who's really the audience that you're looking to serve, and how would they contact you, and is that already like now? And then before we go, for sure, I want to tell people about the next webinar that you'll be hosting.
So what we are doing is we have a network of 12 pro bono programs throughout the state of Indiana that are part of what is called Pro Bono Indiana. That's the parent organization for all those programs. They're located in most of our metropolitan areas, and then those offices serve the rural areas that surround them. For example, in Evansville, I have 10 other counties that I serve other than Vanderburgh County, where Evansville's located. And what we are doing is we are looking to identify attorneys in each of those regions who have an interest in assisting artists and arts organizations. And the process to see if you can get in through that system, if you're interested in that, is in the invitation to this webinar. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have phone line available to call and do an intake, and then we will try to distribute you, depending on where your location in the state is, throughout that system to try to find. If you are low income as an artist, or if you are a small nonprofit that does not have the resources to hire private counsel in your local community, we will try to find pro bono assistance, meaning at no cost for the legal services for you in that. If you are over that, if you have a decent income, or you're employed and your art is your side job or something of that nature, or you're a larger arts organization like the Evansville Philharmonic or the Symphony in Indianapolis, but you would like to try to be hooked up with an artist, a lawyer who has interest in the arts, you can still call. We won't do it for free. We'll send you to a lawyer who will charge you. And that's the way the world should work. If you got the money to pay, If you got the money to pay an artist, you pay the artist. You don't ask the artist to play your wedding for free on Sunday, you pay them. And so for people who can pay, this program is designed to get you to hook up with someone who knows arts and loves arts and wants to help you. But if you can pay, you should. And what that will do is allow them, of course, to take cases for people who are struggling in their work with their art or having trouble making a living right now because of the pandemic, or a small gallery that is on the verge of closing if they don't get some free help. So that's the process we're doing, and we're in the process of incorporating Indiana Lawyer for the Arts as a standalone nonprofit organization, so we'll be able to get liability and other things for that. We'll eventually spin it out of Pro Bono Indiana, and then the attorneys that work with that program will provide that service as we go forward. That's one of the goals of what we're doing. And hopefully this webinar and the webinar we do over the next 2 weeks that Paige is going to preview now will get you a lot of the answers you might otherwise have called for. Because we only want you to call if you really, really need the individualized help. Because there is limited resources, and of course we're in a really ugly pandemic period where getting time of attorneys is just as challenging as getting time for anything else. So the whole reason behind, and by the way, the Indiana Arts Commission being so kind to host these, the whole idea behind these was to get some of these questions answered in a communal way, so that we can focus the limited free services we have on those people who needed the more individualized assistance.
Great, thank you so much, Scott. I think that you've addressed so much of the concerns that we've been hearing, particularly I think within one of the issues that we see consistently is that folks are having a hard time finding space for rehearsal because those places that they would rehearse, they don't really know how to do to move forward. So it sounds like you've addressed that. They can put that in the contractual agreement about, making sure you clean up after yourself, all those kind of elements that are so important. And if you do have resources, please share them with us. We would love to share them to the folks that participated today, as well as put them on our website that will also have a recording of the webinar. And so on August 19th, we know that the eviction moratorium is going to be ending very soon. And that's one thing that we know is going to have a pretty intense impact for folks in the state of Indiana. So you'll be here to address that topic, all the legal issues around paying or collecting rent, tenant rights. As an artist, a lot of folks are renters, and some organizations, they're renting to people. So that'll be a fun one for you. What do you think? Are you excited about that?
And I will tell you, for those of you who may not even think you may not need that, I really encourage you to come back for that, because the reality is that we may have suppliers, we have people that are patrons of ours, we may have other people that we work with in arts communities, especially in arts colonies and other things. You may, today our discussion on renting equipment or facilities through that is all relevant to that discussion, and we'll be going over. And by the way, don't hesitate to think that it will also be helpful if you're the landlord, meaning you're the one renting to people. We understand that this is a crisis both for tenants and for landlords, and the goal of what we're doing across the state is trying to make sure we can save these relationships so they remain mutually beneficial for both, and in our case, we'll be doing it to ensure that art can continue to be presented and or produced, but it'll be information to be valuable across the board.
And I love how you use the words mutually beneficial from our community engagement training that we've done. Scott, this is extremely helpful, and it's so valuable that you are able to share this information with the folks around the state, and that you're willing to do so is really meaningful to us and to everyone else. So just a reminder, that is August 19th at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Scott's not in Eastern time, you're in what, Central time? So that's always fun. So be sure to tune in at that time, register for that as well, and share that information with others that you think would benefit from Scott's expertise. So, and any staff member on this call, if they need to chime in for something I forgot, please do so. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. Yay! Thank you, Scott. You have a great evening.
Thank everybody for attending. I hope this was helpful.
You bet. Bye.